All right, Matt, welcome to episode 9 of the Performance
Holy.
Advantage podcast. And I am very excited about this one. I had 2 coffees this morning because we are finally getting to talk about the brake power meter, the elusive, hidden intellectual property brake power meter is live, and we're going to find out a whole bunch about it today.
Yeah. Man, I've been like really wanting to talk about this, but I just never felt like the time was right to just but like I've been working on it for so many years that, we can just start to talk about things. So, let's do it. No
Yep.
time like the present.
Cool. So, really, we'll go backwards, really, and start from the beginning to where it came from, where the idea came from, and what exactly it is. Because you and I have had extensive experience with this thing and know it, kind of intimately, especially yourself. But everyone else, this has literally never existed in the world before, so they're pretty green.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so if we go back to like one of our first podcasts, we talked about like power meters.
Yeah.
Right? And I like how we think like power meters are like the best thing that you can have for like measuring what you do on the bike, right? So measuring how hard you're pedaling is like it's your physical output, right? And if you want to get better at going faster up hills or going faster on the flats, you need to get better at pedaling. You need to be able to measure it, right?
Yeah.
And that's what power meters do. So power meters record what we're doing with our legs.
Yeah.
So that's all well and good, but when you're mountain biking or doing any type of, sort of technical cycling, pedaling isn't the only thing that's going on. So pedaling speeds you up, but then your brakes are going to slow you back down.
Yep. Makes
Um,
sense.
and so, what we did is we built a brake power meter. So like exactly the same thing that you would use to measure how hard you're pedaling. We use it to measure how hard you're braking.
Yeah. Okay. So I remember the initial, because we did our PhDs together at the same place under a couple of the same supervisors, and your initial idea was pacing, right? Mountain bike pacing.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So that's actually why I moved to New Zealand to do a PhD is I wanted to like using this propulsive power because that's what we call it, like how hard you're pedaling. I wanted to use that to like design this model to kind of say you can pedal this hard and you can sprint this hard. How can you apply that on a cross country race to go the perfect to just pace it absolutely perfectly. So there's some models that exist to use that in road cycling, and I went to New Zealand to use that in mountain biking.
So there are models that exist on the road for this, right?
Yeah, so it's called the W prime balance model,
Yep.
and we basically just need to we need to know like your anaerobic capacity and your aerobic threshold, and we can calculate how quickly you can recover from an effort, and then basically know when you're going to blow up. So I wanted to use that in mountain biking.
Yeah, and that's essentially like if anyone who follows cycling, or actually triathlon, like a long distance triathlon, if you're doing an Ironman and you use power, you know that if you go above a certain power output, which would be considered your threshold, you'll blow up because as you exist above your threshold, there's only a finite amount of time, and then if you follow cycling, you can watch like those dudes, especially Tom Dumoulin, who just rides to power up those climbs. And that's why you're seeing, like, now that there's less drugs in the pro peloton, the whole bunch of them are just riding together. And then it's really just a matter of, like, a few seconds here or there. There's not, like, minutes of people riding off the front of a group going at maximal physiological capabilities.
Yeah, at this point, there's no question. Like if you want to succeed in a cycling sport, you need a power meter. Like that there's no question anymore. You just
Yeah.
need one.
Yeah.
Um, so like, but road cycling's one thing. Like, cause like you might not brake hardly at all in road cycling. Some like downhills, yeah, but it's not going to be the most important factor. So that's why the model works really, really good. Like physical capability and a bit of drafting, and you're good to go. Like in road cycling.
Yeah, very. I mean, it's not that controlled, but compared to mountain biking, very controlled because there's nothing really slowing you down on the downhills. No one like some people aren't that good at handling and things, but for the most part, it's a matter of how much power you can put up going uphill,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and you can almost definitely recover on the downhill. Whereas mountain biking, as we know, is you have to absorb all your shock and technique
Yeah.
and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so when we started looking at the model for mountain biking, we started to see that like that is what's happening. So as you're going down a hill, your VO2, your oxygen uptake doesn't go down very quickly because of all those impacts that you're absorbing just even coasting down a trail.
Yeah,
So for that anaerobic capacity to regenerate during this recovery time,
yeah.
it's not actually like it's not fully regenerating just because of all the other physical things that are happening.
Yeah,
Um,
it's more like running in that sense, right? Like, as if anyone's run up a hill and had to run down a hill, you know the downhill is not recovery. Like, it's
yeah,
definitely slightly easier, but it's also very demanding.
yeah, and I think like in different kinds of mountain biking, depending on how fast you want to go, like there's different levels of demanding. But what we kind of like the point that we actually came to when we did that original research study is that you want to get down the hill as fast as you possibly can and put in as little effort as possible.
Yes. Yep. And so from there,
Yeah, so from there we're like, well, so we were measuring actually. We were having people go down a hill as fast as they can, and they do one trial where they're pedaling, and the other trial where they weren't allowed to pedal.
yeah,
And at the end of it, like we found that they're going exactly the same speed, but they recovered much faster when they were coasting. And we're like,
yeah,
well, what the heck? How is that possible? So around this time, like it started to happen, like in the World Cups, where Aaron Gwynn ended up winning a World Cup um, with no chain.
yeah.
So it's like, well, okay, if pedaling doesn't matter, then obviously there's something else going on there, like that matters um,
Yeah,
for
because
going downhill fast.
when you pedal, like people are pedaling because they think that it's helping them. But then when you did that study, it was like on this particular track anyway, like it was like no different. You ended up just like I was part of that study, and you ended up just being really tired and making more mistakes.
Yeah.
But then there's no way to measure that, is there?
Well, there is now. Yeah, so like at the time, like there was like we're like, whoa, okay, so are they taking better lines? Are they are, like because they're not too tired? Like what the heck's going on? So we just needed to figure out a way to measure that, and our answer was, well, let's start looking at the brakes.
Yeah. So pretty much like how much are you slowing down? How much? It really right?
Well, yeah, like if you want to get from A to B, it's about
Yes.
how fast you go, right? It's not necessarily about pedaling as hard as possible. It's about going as fast as you possibly can. And the very first place to look is, well, the thing that's slowing you down. Just try and like slow down better,
Or
right?
less? Yeah.
Yeah, well, actually, like once you start to look at the data, it's not about slowing down less. It's about slowing down um, more at the right places.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, so
So we'll get
this
into
is the
that. Yeah,
interesting stuff, right? This is
yeah, that's
what's
right.
never been out there before.
Mm,
Um, okay, so I think we've sort of grasped the concept of like if we want to go down a hill, there's a couple ways we can go about it. We can just try our absolute hardest, or we can, I guess, do it the new way of trying less and
yeah,
focusing more.
yeah, like
The
yeah.
more
So
informed way, I guess.
yeah, that's right. Like, cause like when you get tired, your skills start to deteriorate. So you could have the most skilled person in the world, and you could make them do this sprint until they're cross-eyed, and then send them down a hill, and their skill is going to be it's not going to be where it was, right? So um, yeah, it's just about you like finding a way to use that skill to its maximum.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's what it's all about. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, what does the brake power meter do?
Yeah, so we looked at lots of different ways to measure braking. So We thought about like putting little strings on the lever and then like using like a potentiometer. It's called just to see like when your lever's moving. We're like,
So the
well,
brake
yeah, so the brake
lever.
lever.
Yeah.
Yep. So like you could see when the brakes are on or off.
Yeah, so
And like
just when
that,
you're like the basic of like, are you pulling on the brake or not?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff exists like in motorsports, and you see it in telemetry systems on bicycles sometimes as well. It's like just a simple pressure sensor. So you
Yeah.
can see like how hard you're squeezing,
Yeah.
right? So we thought about that and we're like, well, actually, like we're not really getting enough information if we do that. So we're doing science, and we're like, well, let's just measure the physics that's actually happening.
Yeah.
So when something's moving, it has energy,
Yes.
and when you slow it down, you're taking away energy. So
Yeah.
by putting a power meter on each brake, we're measuring the rate of how that energy is going away, just like when we're pedaling.
Okay. So break that down a bit more for us. Like you say you're measuring how you're taking energy away. Like what? So if I'm going down a hill, um, and 30 k's an hour, and then I put the brakes on, sort of slowly because I want to come. There's a giveaway sign at the bottom or a stop sign. There's a stop sign at the bottom. Coming down the hill, 30 k's an hour, or more appropriately, like 50 or 60 k's an hour, and I
Oh,
want to come
wait.
to a complete stop. So I would drag the brakes. I'm not just obviously going to slam them on. I'd sort of drag them out and until I came to like a gradual stop. So what's happening there?
So what's happening is, so when you're moving and you're going like 60 k's an hour, you have what's
Yep.
called kinetic energy. So
Yep.
that's the energy of you moving based on your speed and your mass.
Yep.
Um, so when you want to slow down, what you do is you grab the brakes and you start to convert some of that energy at each brake or at each wheel, which is part of your whole system. You start to convert that into things like heat and noise, and
Yep.
you take it away as you're taking away the energy. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. You're just converting it into a different form. Like
yeah,
so, predominantly heat.
yeah, that's right. Heat and a little bit of noise and some fracture of the tires, but that's why your brakes get really, really hot. Like, to slow someone down from 60 k's an hour to zero, that's a ton of energy.
Yeah.
Your brakes are just going to be absolutely red hot. Like you wouldn't want to touch them. So all
Yeah.
the energy is being converted into heat.
Yeah. Okay. And then you've just been able to measure that. So you've measured sort of from the point I put the brakes on until when I came to a complete stop. But how do you know when I've stopped, and how do you know like how fast I was going? Are you connected to a GPS?
Yeah, so we have wheel speed sensors and we have GPS, and we've looked at like different ways of measuring it because um, like it's really important to be able to get power because that's the rate of taking away this energy. And to get that, we need to know these different speeds that are going on.
Yeah,
Um,
of course. So you can just measure like how fast the wheel's spinning once you know the wheel size, then
yeah,
that's
real
speed.
easy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. And then okay, so heading down the hill. I've put the brakes on, and you've been able to see like how fast I was going. Now, how do you sort of measure the rate at which I slow down? Like, so that's gonna give me what am I seeing? Am I seeing like the energy or the strain gauge? Like, is it force or is it energy? What are we looking at?
Yeah, so what we look at is power. So power is torque times angular velocity. So that's the force pretty much of your braking times how
Yep.
fast the wheel's spinning. So you
Yep.
look at the change from when you start braking and how fast the wheel's spinning, what the torque was the whole time, and then what the wheel spinning or the rate of it spinning there at the end. And then the end result is the power, and that's the rate of the energy that we take away.
Yep. Okay, the rate at which we take the energy away. All
Yeah.
right, so why is that important? Why is the rate of the energy? Like, why do we not just want to know how much we took away?
It's really important, like when we're braking and when we're slowing down, to take away this energy in as short of a time as possible.
As short of a time.
as
Okay.
short of a time as possible. So, like, if you and me coast down a hill, and let's say we have the same exact energy, and so the same exact speed, and we weigh the exact same, our kinetic energy is the same.
Yeah.
I brake the entire time, just from the get-go. We're coasting down this hill. I'm braking the whole time with both brakes, and you go down the hill really, really fast, jam on the brakes really, really hard, and let off.
Yeah.
So it's very, very possible that if we have the same kinetic energy, even though you braked really, really hard and I braked really, really lightly for a long time, it's
Yeah.
really possible that we took away the same energy. That's
Oh wow.
totally possible situation.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
if we think about how fast we went,
Mm-hmm.
you went really, really fast the entire time,
Yes.
whereas I was just slowing down the whole time.
Yeah.
So that's why finding out what the power is, like the amount of time we spent slowing down, is really, really important.
Okay. Yeah. So then, what would be the next question is like, if we use the same energy to slow down, how come I was able to get to the bottom faster? Is it just because like you've applied that energy, the person who just jammed the brakes on right at the bottom, they've applied all of that energy in a really concentrated point of time so that the power is huge, whereas the other person took energy away consistently all the way down the hill, which minimized their kinetic energy and their potential to gain kinetic energy utilizing gravity, so that it actually took a lot longer to get down to the bottom.
Yeah, that's right. You spent way more time going fast. I spent way more time going slow, so my average speed is way lower. But your power is really, really high because you only did that energy in a very, very short amount of time. So power is work divided by time. So if you only braked for 1 second, your power would be super high. Whereas if I was braking for 20 seconds, but I did a lot of, that same amount of work, my average power would be really, really low. So that's
Yeah,
like the basic kind of physics of it, really.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the one extra question would be, if we're doing that and I jam my brakes on, if I start skidding, what's happening there? Because I'm not stopping. I'm still moving forward. The wheels aren't going around, which is the way you're able to measure speed. So how does that work?
Yeah, well, actually, we spend a lot of time like because we had both speed sensors and torque sensors on both wheels,
Yeah.
and we're like, well, this is the best way to do it. But then we started to realize that when mountain bikers are out on the trail, they are skidding quite a lot, and whether or not that's like the perfect strategy for going fast or in control, that's probably debatable, really. But
Okay.
we had to come up with a way to continue to measure power even though they're skidding. So we came up with a correction to our formula, and yeah, we're still able to measure power during skidding.
Okay, so that's part of the special algorithm that interprets the data you're collecting.
Yeah, yeah, we have a couple of different algorithms, and they get like a bit more advanced, but that skidding one was pretty important to find out because it happens so much.
Yeah, I remember going for a run around the massy fields and just seeing you out doing skids
Yeah.
non-stop and then riding
Oh
back
man.
into the lab and then back out and then back in.
I would have I'd shoot through so many tires because we just since it was part of my thesis and we were doing like hard science so yeah, I was out there just skidding on different surfaces like grass and gravel and the road and
Yeah,
just making sure that our correction was absolute spot on. So
yeah.
yeah, just so many tires were roached. So
They
yeah,
were, yeah.
sorry for them. Yeah.
Okay, so we sort of, yeah, we should know now, like, okay, that's sort of what you're measuring. Um, how do we how are we going to use this to help us? Like, I'm not as good a mountain biker as you. When we go down the trails, like, I would consider myself a lot fitter than you. Um, but if we go down the trails, you're just so smooth. I just can't. I'm on the like. I'll just grab a bunch of brake when you didn't, and then you gap, and then I pedal up to you, and then depending on how much pedaling is involved in the track, I can maybe stay with you, but otherwise, you're gone. So how can I use this brake power meter to go make me as fast as you?
Yeah, it's actually funny, the situation you just described, because that's what like gave me the exact idea where I was like, man, I we need to measure braking.
Yeah.
Because we had this club race, a local mountain bike club race, and it was like some of my favorite tracks, like to race cross country in. It's
Yeah.
just like it's at a beach, so like the turns are real sandy, and if you get the turns right, like you can just like smash through them. So
Yeah.
it's super fun. So we started the race, and we were collecting some data for some of the other things I wanted to do, and I found myself a couple minutes in racing against our supervisor, uh, Steve Stannard,
Yeah.
and like he's so fit. Like especially like at that time, like he was still racing a ton, and like I knew he was fitter than me because I had him in the lab, and like he did max test, and he's incredible. And then but then I found myself like in this mountain bike race, like going head to head with Steve Stannard,
Yeah.
and he's way fitter than me. So like I was like, man, this is pretty crazy. So I was like hanging on for dear life on all the straight sections, and then we'd get into the trails, and I could hear him braking, and I can see him braking, and I knew like I was just like kind of doing a death grip kind of thing,
Yeah.
and I was like, man, he must be wasting so much energy,
Yeah.
because his brakes weren't adjusted properly either, and like they're just so squeaky. So like I could just like hear, oh yeah, Steve's braking, Steve braking. Eventually, I passed him, and I think we sprinted for the win or something like that. But I was like, okay, that's it. We need to measure braking.
Yeah.
So so yeah, like once we got the data, we just needed to figure out like we proved that it works, and like we did a few studies kind of looking at how this braking changes, and that like even though they like people can start to pedal a bit less and their propulsive power gets reduced, and then
Mhm.
they also
Yep.
start to brake a little differently, and then they have the same time going around a cross country lap. So they get tired, but they also brake better as they get used to the track, and they go the same speed throughout 3 different laps.
Ah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Okay.
that was pretty crazy for us because we're like, whoa, well, okay, so we could actually, if we look at all this data, we look at how hard they pedal, and we look at how hard they brake. If we put that all into one equation, we can actually predict what their lap time's going to be. Um, so we did that, and that was really cool. I was super pumped on that one, and we got that one published in a pretty good journal.
Yeah.
Um, so that's when we're like, okay, well, that's all well and good. Like within this lap, we know that our braking's changing, but where is it actually changing? So that's what we started to look at: is where is this braking changing?
Okay. And so then what happened?
Yeah. Okay. So it was like we need to figure out like what's actually happening in a really, really short section.
Yeah.
Um, so what we ended up finding is that like in one corner, like braking patterns can be like super different between people, and that like so like especially beginners. So what beginners are going to do, they're going to coast down a hill, and which is what we had them do, beginners and experts. We had them coast down a hill, so that way we could control the energy, so we knew what to expect with the brake power. And beginners they pretty much brake lightly the whole time. So
Okay.
what they're doing is they're braking lightly as soon as they get out of the start gate. They brake entirely through the turn, and then they kind of finish quite slowly, right?
Yeah.
Which is, kind of what you'd expect. And then, we get an expert out there, and the experts, they come out the start gate coasting, totally off the brakes. They brake really hard before the turn, and then they just let off and coast through the turn.
Okay.
So,
So yeah, keep going.
yeah, so even though they're just coasting, like the experts were going like 2 seconds faster in like a super short track.
Yeah, I mean that track must have only been what, like 50 meters, if
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
just that one sort of hairpin corner.
Yeah, it was one 180-degree turn, and we like totally like fenced it off so that way they couldn't like actually pick a different line. Like
Yeah.
it was pretty much just like I think it was like a meter wide or something. So
Yeah, so that they're traveling the exact same course, and so what you found from memory was like what we talked about in the going downhill to the stop sign was like the energy kind of difference wasn't really like they were taking away just as much energy. It's just they did it in a really short space of time.
Yeah, and it was exactly the same amount of energy. Like once we averaged the different groups, which was like, this is when I started to like really catch on to like some physics stuff. I was like, oh man, this is super cool. Um, so like then like those numbers made sense, and then I wanted to look at it like even closer, and that's when we started to look at things like video. We started to look at like the shape of the breaking pattern, and that's stuff that gets beyond like just looking at numbers for like a whole picture kind of thing.
Yeah. Uh, where this all led was from my initial question of how does that going to make me better. Um, Now you've got that one corner. How can I? Yeah. How am I? If I'm just off, I've got one of your brake power meters on my bike. I'm just off for a ride. Smash down the trail. I live in Rotorua, hitting up Eagle vs Shark, my fave, and
It's
I
pretty
get to the
fun, yeah.
bottom, and now I don't. I know. Have I braked completely perfectly on the first corner? Like, have I? I don't. I don't know. How am I supposed to compare that? Or is there a score that I can get or something?
Yeah, there is a score, and that was like one of the things that like I needed to do before like my PhD was done. Like I needed to come up with this algorithm that just gave you one score at the end of a downhill.
Yeah.
Um, and like I was doing all this other stuff in the background, like doing some commercial stuff, and I was like showing these prototypes to different people. But like I really needed to like that one number was super important. And when I what I thought about it was like it's like the Strava kind of number where like you look at a Strava segment and you're like, oh yeah, how was my braking on that? Click, click, click. Oh, yep, this number. Like, oh, okay. I wonder what like Will O'Connor's braking is because he goes down that so fast.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, let me look at Will's profile. Click through Strava. Look at Will's. Oh, his braking was only that. So we call that normalized brake power. Normalized brake work, sorry.
Oh,
That's our single number. It's actually important, like the terminology, even though they're invented things, like it's like a term that isn't a thing
yeah.
until we
Like
like
people should
put numbers together.
understand FTP is completely made up. Like, I mean, there's obviously underpinning science, but they've just made that term up. It's not hard, like it's not like a glucose molecule which exists and is measured and
No,
is, yeah.
no. We could have
Uh,
named it whatever we wanted. Like the first
yeah,
name I
you had
had,
a lot of names.
yeah, it was flow score, which I thought was kind of fitting. Is like, what's your flow score? And
Didn't you want to call it like butter something for smoothness?
yeah, like your butter score or something like that. I don't know. Like, yeah, we went through like through a lot of names, but like in like propulsive power, like normalized brake power is already a thing. Like, is a trademark term that was invented by some of the first scientists that were looking at propulsive power. So we're like, well, let's just call it normalized brake power and normalized brake work, which is the score that you get at the end.
Yeah, okay. And yeah, so I get my normalized break work score or number, however you want to interpret it. And yeah, so what's that showing me? Is it really that comparative thing?
Yeah, it's super comparative. So if we look at someone that took 50 seconds to go down a hill versus someone that took 51 seconds to go down a hill, their normalized brake work is going to be different. So the person that went faster is going to have a lower normalized brake work, which basically means they took away less of that free energy that they were given, that they were pretty much gifted by the hill when they coasted down. Like the
Yeah, from
hill's giving them energy.
gravity and your mass.
Yeah, yeah. The hill's free energy, so like it's
Yeah.
about like how efficient were you with using your brakes?
Yeah. Um, so, but what it like if I'm just out, I live on a farm and I can build up my own track, and I want to test myself there. Then retroactively, am I just looking through and doing a couple runs and going, actually, I'm going to try and brake less, or like something you showed me before we went on air. You realized you were showing me a video overlaid, and you just brake checked. You just grabbed the brake for absolutely no reason.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Like,
that's the other application of it, right?
yeah, yeah. So yeah, definitely. Like, until you can actually see it, like you don't actually know how much you're braking. Like we have this local track, it's called Chewbacca, and like it's super fun, and I ride it quite a lot. And I go down it pretty quick, and I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty good at my like braking here. And then what I was showing you before is I showed you with my braking data overlaid with my point of view footage from my chest cam. Um, and you can't see it with my fingers where I'm braking, but you can see like there's a few times that I was braking really, really hard, which is what we want because um, I was doing what I wanted with my speed, is slowing down really, really quickly, and then letting off, and then letting the trail do its thing on me, right? Giving me
Yeah.
that energy
Yeah.
again. But there were a few times like I would come out of a G out and I would just like tap my brake.
Yeah.
So that happens all the time throughout a downhill. And we don't want that. Like, there's no point. Brake checking, like, if you're on a super technical trail and you need to brake check, that's one thing. But sometimes we're just doing it on like a straight section, and we don't know
Oh
until we
man,
see it.
yeah. And also, when I hit up some new trails, I'll be coming into a corner and maybe you can't see the exit. You grab a huge amount of brake, and then you're like, oh, I really didn't need to do that. But then the next time you might do the same thing. So I think watching it back, like that's going to be super important for a lot of these downhill guys and the enduro guys, where obviously in cross country, there's a lot of factors that go into being at the top of the field. But in those other ones, it is really about how fast can you get down that hill. So if you're able to watch different and take different line choices, you can you're just getting so much more information on how much energy you're sort of taking away and gaining or
Yeah,
losing coming out of that corner or that really steep chute or whatever.
yeah. And like I think like because braking's tricky. Like you can't just say like take away braking because we don't want like anyone to just like go too fast and go out of control. But like
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that are happening with your bike under braking that if you're doing it at the wrong places, they're going to actually put you in a position where you have less control of the bike.
Yeah.
So, because one of the first things that happens when you're braking is like your suspension starts to dive. Like the way current suspension forks work is that's what's going to, if you grab the front brake, you're going to kind of shift forward. Your suspension's going to dive. It's going to flex a little bit and not work so good.
Yeah, and so I mean the best analogy of that is like we've all grabbed a handful of front brake before and gone over the bars. Like whether we're a child, like not understanding how it all works or whatever, but that happens. Like either you've got a rigid fork and all of your energy is just transferred like over the the axis of the front wheel, or your suspension just fully compresses. So yeah, that happens. There's also the rear suspension and stuff, but
Yeah.
continue.
Yeah, the rear suspension kind of stiffens up under braking, even under like the best suspension designs. So like if you're heading into a bumpy section and you come in and you don't slow down enough before it, that means you need to slow down within it. So
Mm-hmm.
then what you're doing is you're putting your suspension in the place where it can't work the way it's supposed to work because you're going too fast through this section.
Yeah,
Um, or maybe you didn't slow down enough before it, and you're also like putting your tires in a position where they're in and out of traction. So if you're
yeah,
hard on the brakes and you're skipping over rocks, they'll be in and out of traction as you're bumping into things.
yeah,
And that abuse translates back to your body. So
yeah.
what we know from like when we studied vibrations going downhill, like those vibrations take a lot of energy and they just contribute to making you more tired. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so outside of like this is just fascinating in insight into your how you're actually traveling down a hill. Does that then alter your suspension settings?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like so if I have because I know they've got a whole bunch of telemetry around suspension. So it's something as simple as how much the suspension's compressing, the rate of compression at different times, and you can overlay that with video as well. And so I've seen these guys go down in the World Cup downhill. They've got all these telemetry sensors all over the bike and the pre-runs and all of that. They'll video the rocky part, like, oh, do we need to stiffen this up or soften it up? But then that is only one aspect, right? If it's too soft or whatever, you might be grabbing some brake, and then like, can you get all the data you need from those suspension sensors?
Not really. So like the suspension telemetry, like suspension's there to keep your wheels on the ground. So if you want to go fast, like you want your wheels to be on the ground when you need them. So it's not necessarily it's not necessarily meant for comfort. It's meant to like for traction. Traction's important because like if you have traction, you can go fast. So
Yeah,
anytime you're braking or turning, like your traction is kind of changing. And if you're just measuring how the suspension's working and you're not measuring the braking input to that, you're kind of missing out on a little bit of that. And mostly has to do with the way it flexes and how it stiffens up
yeah.
under braking. Yeah.
Yeah, and then if you're saying, if you're getting, we're both in the same, sponsored team, we got the same bike, and they've sent you down, and I've come in later, and they're like, oh, you need a soft setup, but I have a different, normalized brake work than you. I have a different braking profile. My suspension may differ dramatically in order to gain traction the
Yeah.
same way you do.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Like if you're like, and it has to do with brake balance as well. Like some people are really heavy on the rear brake,
Yeah,
and some are like really, really good at using the front. Like most of us are going to use the rear brake pretty much predominantly, and we'll probably drag it like all the time. But
yeah,
then some people will use the front brake really, really well. And there's this whole like thing from motocross or like car racing or whatever where they talk about proportions of like where your power's coming from when you're braking, and that does not apply to mountain biking at all. Like there's no such thing as 70-30 in mountain biking because the conditions are never that perfect. And
yeah.
people try to argue with me on forums about that stuff. Well, they don't argue. I just ignore it because I'm like, well, no, everyone's braking mostly in the rear. But yeah, like what suspension is really what it needs to do is it needs to react to the forces that you're kind of giving it. So there needs to be some sort of electronic kind of adjustment. So as you're braking, the suspension either needs to stiffen up or something like that because yeah, as like mountain biking gets more advanced and motocross, like suspension is going to start to react to braking.
Yeah.
Um, but at the moment, it's just reacting to the trail really, and you can kind of keep it on just a few different settings throughout.
Yeah. So then where's the application for your brake power meter? Like, is it consumer? Are we going to be the ones with it, or is it going to be like these pro teams, or because what you're saying is like now I'm starting to think about what about different brake pad compounds?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I've talked to like a lot of different brake companies that are interested in like using this to test like just different things with the pads. Like, there's a lot of cool pad
And the
technology now.
rotors as well, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah, oh yeah, totally. Rotors are super important. I think they get overlooked a lot. Like some people will run the same rotors for years on their trail bikes and they're just like totally burnt and like smooth. But
yeah,
rotors need to be like pretty fresh. Like on the World Cup, they'll go through a couple rotors a day and just, kind of chuck them out because they break
yeah,
so hard and, you know, smooth them out too quickly.
yeah. Well, if it's that hot, those dudes are going fast, and girls are going fast down
Yeah.
very
Oh yeah.
steep sections and
Yeah.
needing to take away a lot of energy.
Yeah. They're braking so hard. Like the highest number I've seen is like 10,000 watts in braking, and that was on a pretty big guy going really, really fast on a trail bike. Um,
Yeah,
so like if you think about someone going like ridiculously fast on a downhill bike, like there's going to be some huge power spikes, and all that energy is being converted into heat into the rotor and the
yeah, just
pads, and
that
that's why they
small
smoke
brake
things.
pad.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So yeah, those that technology kind of needs to change. Like pad technology is kind of just a crossover from like the moto industry. They use the same compounds most of the time, and
okay,
the heat is a lot different. So there needs to be like different pad compounds for your different levels of riders and stuff like that.
Yeah, right. Okay.
But yeah, as far as who's going to use it, yeah, like it think like cycling sports like have a trickle down kind of thing where it starts at the elite level and then it kind of comes down to like us mere consumers. Um,
Yeah, well, most people didn't, power meters were like, people really actually thought they were a waste of money and a waste of time when they first came out. Um, and I've heard that being said about your brake power meter
yeah,
as well.
yeah,
Like why do we need to know? You need to get down as fast as possible. Why do you need to know how much you're braking? Like, has no application.
yeah, yeah. That's
Um,
funny. I remember everyone saying about that about power meters because
yeah, we had heart rate and we had speed, and
yeah,
we could do a hill time trial. Like,
yeah.
that's going to show you where you're at.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's so funny. I was looking through a stack of papers I had the other day, and I printed out like this training with power manual that came out with the power tap power meters that were sold like in 2007 or
Yeah,
something like that. And that's not really that long ago. Like that's when the first iPhone came out. So I guess it is that long ago. Like 12 years. It's 2019, but like. Um, it was like a 20-page booklet that had no information and was on the super expensive part that no one bought.
yeah,
And like now, like you need a power meter. Like if you don't have a power meter, like you're just gonna you're not really gonna have any idea how to train appropriately. You're not gonna be getting as much as you can and out of yourself. And when a bike costs like 12 grand, like spending $1,000 on a power meter so that you can like actually go faster, it just makes sense. Um,
yeah,
so in 12 years, we've come from a point where like people are like, oh yeah, it's only for the pros to now like everyone needs it. So, braking is going to be the same way. I have no doubt about that.
yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I can definitely see the applications, although I'm quite close to it. But I'm sure, like I know you work with some professional downhill riders. What's their response been? Like, I know, like, I've been watching, Red Bull put out background stuff, so did like Pink Bike and Vital and stuff, and these guys like, oh yeah, I think like I'm pretty good at braking, or I think this. Like they have
Yeah.
no idea. They
Yeah.
have no
No,
idea.
I think like they do get a bit of the telemetry stuff going on with they're mostly looking at suspension though. And they'll get some feedback on the braking. But for how important it is, I think actually not enough time gets spent on like looking at braking patterns and things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So a lot of times they'll just use telemetry systems to get feedback to make a better bike. Um, and it's just kind of looking at like sensors, different places on the bike, and maybe not used as a training tool when um, it really could be. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, and yeah, I guess this would be the biggest progression in mountain biking for quite a long time, right?
Yeah, I mean, like the sport's changed. Like bikes have changed a lot, and like we have like ways to measure our suspension now, and we have ways to measure our tire pressure. Um, and like I think the sport's like been progressing for a long time as
Yeah,
technology becomes smaller and lighter and cheaper, and um, I think it's just kind of the next obvious step, in in the sport, really. Yeah, like I don't know why it takes so long sometimes for technology to make its way into cycling sports, but yeah,
yeah.
it's just
Well,
time.
we've talked about this, and it's kind of I rant about it, and so do you. I think where there's like mountain biking has a lot less restrictions, so there is a lot more progression. But in terms of road cycling, um, we have the same drivetrain, we have the same gears. Like the only thing that's really changed is that people wear aero helmets and the gears are now electronic, but they're still doing the exact same thing. They're just the means of shifting a gear is slightly different. Carbon compounds have improved a little bit, but there's nothing radically that has changed. Just the standard. This new whatever is stiffer, lighter, and more aerodynamic.
Yeah. I think like with the cycling industry just kind of gets like, well, I don't even know why it happens, like, but weight just becomes so important, and people are so like concerned about like saving a few grams, and then like you look at, so, saving a few grams versus having a power meter that can help you actually use the energy that you have in your body to actually go faster.
Yeah,
Um, you know, for a long time, that was a big question mark of whether you should add 20 grams and spend some money to have a power meter. But just because of the weight thing, I think. But, like with the current trend of like enduro mountain biking becoming like a really popular form of racing, and then like that translating into the trails where people like to kind of just cruise up the hills and then smash down them. That's like a newish kind of trend.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
So, in that respect, like having the lightest bike isn't super important. So people are adding like more gadgets and stuff.
Yeah. So where to from here? Like, can we buy them?
No, well, you can't. But like I have it and I'm using it, and I'm getting ready to post up some videos of like my POV footage with like all the braking patterns and stuff, and you can see how like the shape of the pattern matters, and like where I brake matters, and where like you can just see it all, and like I can use it with people. Like if someone wants to contact me, we can put it on their bike and we can use it. But in terms of buying it, we're just not there yet. Like we have lots of prototypes and lots of wireless things, cool app to use with it, but yeah, we just need more money. It's the yeah, like so like we have patents and stuff, and like they're really good, but like um, we just need to like I need money to finish the development, really.
Yeah, 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 and especially to launch a commercially viable product like this is, I'm sure, very expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, like there's a lot of like things that have to go on in the background. Like I've spent most of my time trying to figure out like what to do with the information, and then my supporters have spent, most of their resources, with IP positions, um, and it's just a matter of, in my mind, what I need to do is show people how useful this is. So that's what I'm fully focused on, and I think once someone sees that, we'll get what we need, and people, it'll be a product that people can buy and use.
Yeah, so in the short term, let's just say the rest of the year kind of thing, you're going to be consulting to different individuals and teams and maybe brake manufacturers or suspension manufacturers, frame manufacturers on just applying your power meter and the data. Because at the moment, like, yeah, you've talked around it, but people are probably still scratching their head a bit about some of the applications and things, and you're essentially the only one who has the interpretation of the data.
Yeah, yeah, I've spent a couple years doing it, and I've seen lots of, well, I mean, mostly what I've done is made a lot of like dumb mistakes. So like thinking about all these years that I've spent doing it, I'm like, well, I just need to keep doing it. Like I'm super passionate about it, and like I've already spent this much time. So until it's a thing that people can buy, I'm going to keep doing it. And it starts with just offering the testing as a service, because I have the
Yeah.
full setup that I can put on someone's bike. So yeah, I'm going to do that, and I can test different brakes and things like that. Um, yeah.
Yeah. So if someone wants to test, like, why are they going to come to you? What are they going to get if they're coming to you to test out their full setup?
Yeah, well, at the moment, I'm fully focused on braking, but my I can do suspension telemetry. Although I don't know anything about it really. I can like hook it up and see what it does. But yeah, I'm fully focused on braking, and the most powerful tool that I know of is plugging in my algorithms and linking the data with the point of view footage from the GoPros and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm gonna do.
So
I have
like
a,
you're going to be able to, but what will I? You're going to send me down. I've got the POV, like point of view footage and the braking profile and everything, and you're gonna teach me what?
Basically what I can do is I can show you what you're doing wrong. And like so pretty much we're all doing something wrong if we want to go really, really fast. Otherwise we'd be a world champion, right?
Yeah, well,
And
like that video, it just blew my mind before we went on air. That one, you just grabbed a bunch of brake, and you were going into like a little uphill. Like
yeah,
it was,
yeah,
it was phenomenal. There's no reason for you to take away energy there,
no,
and you would have no way of knowing that you did that.
no, no, no.
And even if you had like just a pressure sensor on the caliper, on not on the caliper, on the lever, you would be like, oh, that was nothing. It doesn't even matter.
Yeah, yeah, it actually slowed me down quite a lot. But yeah, like to me, like if I think about myself going down a trail and what that data means to me, it just means that I have other skills that I can work on. So in that section that we looked at,
Yeah, really free ones. Like, like that. It's not like fitness is hard. This is it's a hard means to go about getting stronger or fitter or even losing weight and all that
yeah,
kind of stuff. But in terms of just not breaking, like that's just the information service. Like once you know, you
yeah,
can. This, I mean, it's like yeah, free speed.
yeah. And it tells me that like I have other skills that I need to work on, not just my braking. So because the reason I braked in that section that I think we're both thinking about is that I wasn't super confident about the jump that was coming
Yeah,
up. And I
yeah,
know that's like one of my weaknesses is like if I want to go faster and be at the level of, even some of the, the best amateurs or whatever, I need to be super confident in just maintaining that speed and jumping over things, like so like doubling things up. And I
yeah,
know from following people that um, you know, they are doubling things like that up and I'm not. So this
yeah,
braking footage puts it into perspective for me that I know I braked, I know I slowed down there for no reason. I need to work on my jumping. And
yeah.
we know that, like we go down the jump track in Rotorua, and you just jump faster than me,
Yeah, I've
because
had
you're
those
confident
things
on the
for sure.
jumps. Yeah,
Yeah. Um, yeah, yeah. Oh, okay. Oh man. So are they best to get you called out like to their tracks so then you can see where that you're braking, like where like if and then you can practice on their own trails on their specific kind of things. Like this jump, and so you can test out your different strategies that they've learned from you, and then you've got better time measurements there.
yeah, totally. It's like yeah, we can go to their trails. They can come to my trails. I have good local trails. Rotorua is a really good place to do it. And we just want to maximize the amount of like descending that we can do. And just try different things like slow down a lot here and then let off the brakes. We've tried that a lot of times, and you just end up going faster even if you slow down a ton in one section. Yeah, there's lots of things that we can do. Yeah,
Yeah, and people just really, whenever I've worked with runners on their technique, it's just blowing their mind about how much small changes can make. Or once they've seen the video footage and then overlaid with different, angles or point of contacts and, like the GPS data and stuff, like I never knew I was doing that. They just had no idea, and you go, okay, well, this is how you fix it, a knowledge they may, previously not have had, and it can make dramatic changes. It doesn't, but if you've never ever seen it, if you've never ever seen your braking profile, you'd have no idea. So I think it's very worthwhile investment in your in your progression in the sport.
yeah. Like, well, we live in a a day and age where we can measure everything. So like our phones measure everything for us. Like mine automatically measures how many steps I take. And unless I look to see how many steps I took, like I don't actually know. I'm just, oh yeah, I took, you know, 10,000 steps that day when in actual fact I didn't even get off the couch or something, you know, like unless I measure it, I'm like, that's right. And then I can look back and be like, I didn't even get off the couch that day or something like that because I have that information.
Yeah.
And that's just the world we live in. Like we measure things and we get evidence and then we make changes from there. Especially if it's a sport where we want to get faster. That's where things are going to start.
Yeah. So what's the best way for people to tee it up with you?
Yeah, just email me, matt@mtbphd.com. And yeah, like I just love this stuff. So like whether it's like helping someone measure it or if it's like uh, building a product that everyone can have, like those are the things that I want. And yeah, I so whatever the best way is for that to happen, yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. So what else would there be to go over to for people to know about the brake power meter? Like, what's our next steps? You're gonna release, you're gonna start to educate the public, I
Yeah.
guess, with these videos and these blogs and just all this information.
Yeah, like now that I have more time, like because my thesis is done and I'm not like working at the university and I'm doing this kind of stuff full time, like I can focus on getting out that information. Like I was just looking at my thesis the other day because I needed to check some of the algorithms. I was like, man, there's a lot in here that like you just can't get anywhere else
Yeah.
because that information's not out there. So. Um, like I might as well like I have it so I want to educate people on like how they can use it
Yeah.
so once it is available that way they can use it.
Oh man, it sounds pretty awesome, and we'll touch back on it once you have had a few more people through using it. You got some of these cool videos which I've been checking out. So once they get produced and don't turn up upside down,
Yeah,
I'll be pretty keen to see those. That's kind of one of the I guess the setbacks or of being sole traders,
yeah,
the sole owner, employer, marketer, content producer, coach, everything of your own company is it all takes a bit of time.
yeah, we talk about that quite a lot, you and I, like because we both have we have our own companies and we're trying to do a lot and you just kind of run out of time uh, and yeah, like so, I might spend like 2 days trying to flip a video over, and like that's the actual reality of it. When I have like piles and piles of data that like I need to get out there. Um, yes, so that's just the reality of it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, what's on this weekend? Oh, well, people should follow you. Where are they following you at if they're not on
Yeah,
the
just
gram?
yeah, the Gram's probably the best place. At MTB_PhD or at Break Power Meter. I try and update those with kind of what's going on with my athletes and my coaching and the breaking stuff. So yeah, those are probably best.
Yeah, and a bit on the Facebook and the website as well. But that's all pretty much linked through your Instagram, right? So
Yeah,
that's
that's right.
the point. That's the point of contact.
Yeah, the Gram's the hub these days. So yeah.
Yeah, it depends who you talk to.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure my mum wouldn't say that.
Yeah, well, she's not going to use the brake power meter, I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I'm not. Yeah, probably not.
Yeah. How
Yeah.
about you? What's on this weekend?
Um, well, I guess it's Easter. I'm running trail running workshops here in Rotorua to teach people to. Well, it's like what you're saying. Navigate the trails more efficiently. Currently, we don't have a way to measure that. Although it'd be really interesting. The power meter, the stride or Garmin power meter doesn't really help with like technicality aspects. But yeah, that's on this weekend. Probably going to do some mountain biking over
Oh,
in
cool.
Tongariro, over in the national park. But yeah, sort of recovering from. I got one more hit out before Rotorua. So for those who have been following along with my Rotorua marathon build up, just ran a personal best over the weekend.
Oh, congrats.
1:13:40 for the half marathon. So that was a big one. Like that was like my last test of how I was tracking towards it. Like I was as another sort of 100k plus week, under quite a bit of fatigue, and was still able to push all the way through, get a massive PB, be right in amongst the race, and hold good pace. So yeah, that was really good. Everything. So now it's, yeah, I guess next week we can maybe talk about peaking or tapering and stuff like that, because right now it's that real juggling act of like, I've got one more session to do, I still need to train, but I also need to recover, and I also don't want to get fat, and I don't want to get unfit, and
Yeah, it's a struggle.
all of those things that I know one of the guys I'm racing, I raced him in the weekend and he beat me by about, a minute and a half. So it's like, oh, was he on form? Is he traveling up? Am I traveling further up? I know he, I checked his Strava out, obviously.
Yeah.
And he had tapered in like more than me for that race. It's, yeah, the mind games begin, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you'll have to start deleting some things from your Strava or adding some fake things in, you know?
Yeah, I'd start giving it to Emma on the bike. She can follow along one of my sessions. I just get a bike ahead for
There
the
you
last
go. Yeah,
5k,
yeah.
just slightly faster.
Just sprint at like 60 Ks an hour.
All right, Matt. Well, that'll do us for today.
Cool.
Thanks. Really appreciate you releasing that information to us.
Thank you.